Today, I get the pleasure to speak with Alex Roa, and he's got a business. Well, he's got several businesses, but the business I think we're going to talk about today is called the Culture Club. So, tell me, the Culture Club. How did it start? What's your claim to fame? I'm super intrigued about what you're doing here.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Warren. Culture Club has been around for almost 3 years now. We'll be turning 3 years old in 1 month. So I think there's a study out there. It says like 95% of businesses fail in the first 3 years. We're trying to, we have 1 month to beat that statistic. So
Yeah.
we're on track, hopefully. We started so yeah, 3 years ago, 2 years and 11 months ago.
Nice.
Um, we started as a influencer marketing professional services company, so working with the uh, corporations, small businesses, e-commerce brands, record labels, artist managers to help promote and market whatever it is they want to promote and market through social media, using influencers and content creators to push out either advertising campaigns, awareness campaigns, or to lead audiences to purchase or to engage with whatever it is. And I know that's a bunch of general terms, but I hope that makes sense. Kind of, it's a lot of yeah.
Well,
So that
I'll tell you, I'll just interject. I have a friend that's got a retail store and they
Mhm.
do crafts and they had somebody come in uh, that that was unpaid. They came into their store and it blew up their store. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, in a good way.
yeah.
So I know influencers can make a big difference in impact in marketing.
And that's the thing. So one of our motto at the Culture Club is inspiring global culture. And so when you have a moment like that where it's organic and someone's not paid, um, we like to say that's like an inspiring moment, and that's the best thing you can have. Like that's the on a scale of 0 to 10 in engagement with an influencer, that's a 10. That's the best way. Someone just walks into the store or walks into they try your bagel or they try your food or they look at your website or they play your game or they listen to your song, whatever it is that you're wanting to promote, and they give an honest and great review about it. I mean, that's the number one best way, the organic approach. However, sometimes if no one's ever heard of you before, you can't get that
Yeah.
organic approach, especially with the way things are. So, we try to help transition what they say digital transformation. We want to help transform a lot of these businesses to the digital age with paid interactions with influencers, but at the same time, making it seem as if it's organic as much as it can be, as much as possible. Whether that's from a creative standpoint, or whether that's like how we are approaching that. A lot of businesses, for example, uh, they want to market to Gen Z using, baby boomer humor. so, how do you transition those things from a creative perspective and a procedural perspective? There's also some other components um, that go into that. Um, one of the things. So we've been doing that, essentially growing that business out, whether it's, um, improving the quality of influencers we work with, improving the strategies from a creative side, or improving the way we work with and engage with brands. For the past, since the start of the year, but really for the past 2 months, we've actually been rolling out this is not maybe listed on a website anywhere. So this is new information for your audience, Warren. We've been rolling out a software that actually does a lot of the process for marketing teams on the corporation side. So it's a free to use software. Um, we actually, you think of it like an Upwork, you think of it like a booking site where we make money like on the transaction. So you actually can now book the influencer directly. If you're and we make recommendations for you. So there's actually an algorithm that makes recommendations for you. You're happy to talk to someone from the Culture Club team. The reason why we actually did this is because we ended up getting so many inquiries every week that it became impossible to do it without a software. And we said, once we built the software for ourselves, we said, well, why don't we just make this open for everyone to use? And so that's an entirely new business model that we are now exploring. And now it's, like I said, very recent, very new, 2 months old kind of process. So that's been the most exciting thing. Um, and yeah, that's kind of what Culture Club is and who we are, and yeah.
So that's super brilliant because you learned how to use leverage, right?
Mhm.
Because you have a limited amount of people and time, and so now you might not make as much per transaction, but you're hoping for a lot more transactions.
Well, that's yeah. So it's a volume game, and our business model was always a volume game because we found that there was what our whole thing is. Um, the way that culture forms on the internet, and generally speaking, I don't think it's a top down approach. So,
Hmm.
generally speaking, like I think you turn on the news, if the news starts saying something, maybe you'll say, "Oh, this is relevant," or wherever you find your cultural things. But usually, there's a source for which they promote that, and that comes from not at the top level. Sometimes it can, but I think most organic culture moments happen either in this like middle space. See, in the traditional terms, it's hard to like define. In the social media terms, it's easy. Okay, this guy has 10 million followers. He's posting this trend because he saw someone with 1 million followers post it. And that guy with 1 million followers saw someone with 1,000 followers post, start the trend, right?
Ah,
So it's easier to metric in the digital space. It's harder to like kind of use metaphors in the
yeah.
traditional space. But essentially, like we find it, our play was instead of, we go to Walmart. I use Walmart as all my example because they're actually not a client of ours. And so I hope that one day they will become a client because I mentioned Walmart in all my examples when I talk to people. So let's just say Walmart's a Fortune 500 company, right? They want to work with influencers. And so they choose, okay, we can either work with Mr. Beast, which maybe you know who that is, who's really the most of it and influential person right now on the internet,
Okay.
or they want to work with, or they get the option to work with Culture Club, who works with uh, hundreds and hundreds of creators that aren't individually as big as Mr. Beast, but collectively with the aggregate following and the aggregate engagement would have the same reach. And so you do a cost by cost comparison. You do kind of a creative strategy. So everything from a business model has always been an aggregate like volume play, and we're hoping to accelerate that with our platform. So yeah, it is a change, and obviously instead of a service fee, like a managed services or like
Mhm.
professional services fee, we're taking a transaction fee. So it's a little bit different, but essentially from a business model, it's kind of the same but kind of different. So yeah, it's definitely leverage on what we've already built, and then trying to accelerate that for other people.
What is it? What is it called, by the way? Or do you go to, how do you get to this software or this
Give
you
me
know,
give me one second. So I
yeah,
I just lost the audio.
I got you now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I lost audio there.
That's all right. No worries.
Okay, there we go. So that's yeah, that's a little bit about where we are, and that's who Culture Club is, and that's what we're up to. So
So how'd you start this business? What you know, what prompted you?
I was introduced to the influencer space. I'm from Houston, so I'm Houston native, and I'm based here. I will caveat that I do travel quite a bit, essentially half the year, for different meetings and different. We have clients everywhere.
Sure.
So I last night got back from New York, and the week before that I was in Miami. This summer I'll be across Asia. It's everywhere, right? It's global. The internet is everywhere. So and everyone needs to work with influencers. And I was introduced to this around 3 years ago, um, when I was in Houston. I was working with some musician and artists
Yeah.
as sort of like a promoter, like as kind of a promoter or manager. And this was I was very young, so I'll date myself here. I was 18, a senior in high school,
Wow.
and we were doing like events and live shows for these artists. And then COVID happens, and
Yeah.
I don't have like school anymore. I mean, school, we still had school. It was, but it was kind of like you're not going to school anymore. And we had 3 months until graduation, high school graduation. And I said, well, what can we do on TikTok? Because everyone's bored in quarantine and needs to do something for fun. So we started doing these dance challenges for the songs that, like the artists that we were working with, and they went viral. And within 8 months, I was in LA doing record label meetings on behalf of these artists, and it was quite the turnaround. I mean, quite the like, oh, here I am. And then that had its lifespan, and I figured out, okay, what do I do next? And the way I figured that out is, well, how do we get here in the first place? That was through influencers and social media and being smart and being they people will use this term scrappy, being scrappy,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, so then making a business out of that and helping other people do the same from other musicians, but then expanding it to what everyone, musicians just one market. We
Sure.
can expand to every single market, and do the same thing. So that's a little intro on how I got there.
That is crazy. So I've talked to several people where they sort of just backed into a business. They either had something or caused something to happen, and
Mhm.
then they realized, oh my gosh, I got something here, or something happened to them and there's a need and they fulfilled the need.
Yeah,
So what's the biggest thing you've learned so far?
I learn things every day, Warren. I mean, there's a new lesson every day. I write them down actually, and I feel like I should have probably pulled it up for the meeting. But let me think of something. What have I learned in the process? Like learned a lot of things. I'd say uh, I definitely think there's not a one size fits all for business owners and like entrepreneurs. Like I think there were times where I was taking advice that sounded like good advice
Ah,
that wasn't good advice. So I think in any advice giving thing, like there's always should be like hey, is this actually good advice for what I'm doing? For example, we could talk about it, a food business, right? A
yeah,
hypothetical food business. And this hypothetical food business runs completely different, has different needs, different clients, different speeds of which revenue can come in and be expended. So, like, if I were to go to a food business and say, hey, you guys need to have month over month recurring revenue that's over the profit margin, right? Like where you're actually, if I'm saying a tech platform or an agency, you need to have cash every month. Like you need to have
yes,
cash every month because that's your business, you're a cash business. But a
yeah.
food company is different, and there's different nuances within that, even within the agency model. But that's one thing I would start with. I think another, I guess more material thing I've learned is this is the most cliche thing, but it's like really who like and
Yes.
I think presenting yourself the right way. I think when I've said this a couple times. I was in New York the past few days. Going into business negotiations or just networking with an open hand rather than a closed hand. There's a term that may be appropriate. What we say, pitch slapping. If you go into every meeting and you just slap someone with your pitch, it's not, to me, it's like what I've learned. What I think one of the big things starting out, it was like I'd go into every networking. This is what I do. This is who I am. Here's my life story. And the other person's like, I don't like, who are you? Like, I don't care. Like, like I think finding middle ground first and being friends first and then being aggressive with the pitch is more effective and efficient than saying hi then your pitch. So there's a term pitch slapping that maybe your audience knows now, and that's just, yeah, that's a big thing that I've learned not to do, especially if you're like really passionate about your business and like really passionate about the problems you're solving. It can be very tempting to just go like, hey, you should be as excited and fanatic about my business as I am,
Yeah.
and that's just not how people are. Uh, it's just not how people are unless they're in the same business, and they have the same idea, and then maybe yeah, they're that's just not typically how it works. So um, I think another thing, I'll keep going. See, now I'm thinking about
Please.
it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I
yeah.
think another thing is like with anything, incentive is the outcome. And so managing and creating and managing and directing incentive, whether that's from a client onboarding or from a team management, like managing employees, managing team members, managing contractors, managing like what's the incentive is the most important question I think that I've been thinking about recently because
Hmm.
when you when you scale, particularly when you scale up and you have to bring people under, if you're, for example, if you were to give, let's say, the average deal value to your company that you close is $1,000, and you say, "Hey, contractor, be my salesperson. Here's $500 for every closed deal," and you say, "Okay, yeah, I can justify that because for every deal they close, we make 500 and they make 500." Okay, well, what now you have those deals closed. Let's say you close 100 deals, but now that deal actually cost you 500 because you have to manage the deal. You have to provide more resources internally. You have to do XYZ to make sure that deal stays. So your if you're always improving your quality of service or your quality of product, your
Right.
costs may go up. And in this economy, that seems to be what we've experienced. Now, in other economies, in other situations, in other industries, maybe with economies of scale, your price goes down, whatever that is. But your incentive structure for scaling there in the first place may have to change because you may be losing money at some level because that's an issue we have. But that lesson goes to a lot of things like when we're trying to get people on the platform. That there's with any new technology that exists, there always is a learning curve, right? There's a photo somewhere of like the original light bulbs had a instruction manual when on the light switch to make sure people like knew that they didn't have to light it with a lighter for the light to turn
Later.
on. So I mean, every new technology has a learning curve, and so how do you incentivize people? Because at a certain level, people are very stuck in their ways, unless
Yeah,
something is like a million times better, going from not chat gpt to using chat gpt every single day, like
yeah.
or google or some of these like massive innovations. Like how do you really incentivize people to move to a new product or a new process really? And that's a huge question. Is that a financial incentive? Is it a keeping up with the Joneses? Like, hey, this other company you compete with is 10x their results by using this. I mean, there's how do you incentivize? Is it a social thing? Is it a financial thing? In business, it's hard to go like, oh, this is a religious thing or something, So like understanding psychology and understand why people do things is a part of that. So that's a little TED talk of
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
I think you raise an interesting point because some people don't know there is a better way, and if the formula for change is dissatisfaction times vision plus first steps, that has to overcome resistance, right? So you've got to have dissatisfaction of the current situation, and then you have to have a vision of where you want to go,
Yeah.
and then you actually have to do something. So motivating somebody to do something different than what they're used to doing has to have both of those. You can't
Yeah.
just be frustrated with where you are and not have a vision of where you want to go. But that motivation is different. So tell me, so I wanted to catch something else that you said there because I think it's super important when people are starting businesses or scaling businesses because you think about your real cost of goods or cost of services in this example, it's more than $500, right? It's like, hey, I got $500. Yeah, if it costs you more than $500 to do the transaction, you paid the sales guy $500. You're not going to make it up on the volume. You're just
No.
losing more.
No. And then it depends, like understanding economics and like how prices may change is really important too. I mean, and that was a problem we had. You also want to incentivize if you're doing a service-based business, you also want to incentivize quality of service. So like let's say transition, like okay, let's say the average deal value is $1,000.
Mhm.
Um, you want to make sure that the person who's managed, if you scale out and you're not managing your own deals anymore, like you have a operations manager or production manager, whatever that person may be, their
Yeah.
title, you want to make sure that they do the best job they can with it not being their company. outside of the salary they're paid. Um, there's such a big conversation about the future of work and about having equity and about having future this whole thing. And so you want to make sure, like, if you're not actively doing those things, that at least from a incentive level, there's other. If you're not giving out equity or stock options, a startup is very, startups are very uh, cutthroat, I guess you'd say. It's not like a corporation that has stock options you sign on and get 6 figure with, like going to work at Google, for example. But
Right.
um, it, I think incentivizing in that sense, and you can incentivize with vision. I think, you can
Yes.
tap into people's religious sense if you say this is the future and we're building it. I think that's like what Elon Musk does with his companies. Like, we're going to space and we're going to like make humanity a multi-planetary species. Like, this is his philosophy, which
Hmm.
I think builds his companies. And I think you tap into people's sense of purpose and like bigger picture stuff. But like, most businesses aren't trying to go to the moon. I mean, I would think, right? if,
Yeah, that
if they would,
said, there is a I think you tapped in a super important point because there's three things that there's a study I think it was done by Oxford and there's 3 points after people are making good money. There's three ways to motivate them.
uh-huh.
Uh, Number one is creativity. Number two is being able to kind of set their own autonomy.
Yeah,
Okay. And number three is that vision of either helping the world, helping your community, something helping my causes that I want, helping invest in my charities, but something bigger. And so bigger can be small companies too, don't you think? I mean,
of
you're
course. Yeah.
so what's your vision of your company? What's your
Well,
vision?
yeah. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a pivot. First, it was this inspiring global culture, and there was a big motivation to be where a lot of these internet moments start, right? Like, you see people start doing funny dances or whatever that means, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think in that vision and in that pursuit, we saw ups and downs. The internet is a very beautiful but horrifying place, right?
Mm,
So, and from that transcends real life things, right? You see protests going on, things that happen online are now happening in person. So we see that correlation.
yes.
So I think there's definitely still value there, and that's not something I'm more or less saying we're adding to that vision. And I think with the software, I think we will help scale that vision to a different height, because part of it is financial software for the influencer that doesn't exist. And now, this month we are expanding that the definition of influencer, because it's like that's just what we started with, to just be any 1099 entertainer, because
Oh,
essentially that's what it is, right? Whether you're an athlete with a following on social media, or you're a comedian, or you're an actor, or you're a model, or whatever you are, you're a 1099 entertainer. And in the eyes of the law, in
yeah.
the eyes of the law, you're a 1099 entertainer. And there's almost no financial or legal infrastructure from a software side for your business. And a good example of this is like in oil and gas. That you were from Houston, right? In oil and gas, you have Invoice Factory, and you have a whole slew of financial and legal technologies that help manage workflow and trades business. Um, and the same with professional services like legal and like financial, like the stock. If you're a stock trader or you're a crypto trader, there's a bunch of technology for you. But if
Sure.
you're what we're calling a 1099 entertainer, which can be influencer, can be creator, can be athlete, can be actor, there's almost none. Um,
Huh. Huh.
and there's definitely people that have tried, but I think there's this synergy that you have to have with a bunch of different bases. Um, and that is understanding how uh, things can be very different. Like, if we work with an athlete, the mode of work is different than if we worked with some guy who does dance videos in Poland. It's totally different, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
think hiring a team that understands that's ample to have empathy for like other people's walks of life, but
Mhm.
also just flexible. And I think there's bureaucracy in every industry, but I think in entertainment, the bureaucracy is like really hard to move around, because there's 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 like a union essentially. I mean, people that are agents or managers
Hmm.
or yeah, those two categories. It's like a union, and people really vote for each other. And not that I want to go in and like mess all that up, but I just think there's a more efficient and speedier way to do things. And so that's what we're hoping this can do. And we want to include, and I think that's where people have failed is not including those people. Like there was a platform that came out that tried to circumvent the manager and the agent. Uh,
Wow.
and I think if you cut those people out, you're going to get burned. They're going to find
Yeah.
a way to burn you. And so we don't want to cut those people out. We just want to streamline the process. And so I think that's kind of some higher level, like bigger picture things and so that all incorporates into inspiring global culture because if we can make it easier for people to be creative and accelerate the creative process by uh, whether that's uh, whether that's with influencers on social media or
Yeah.
that's athletes posting or that's comedians, whatever they're doing. Um, if we can accelerate their careers by making it easier, we'd like to do that. And that's more encompassing outside of just like, hey, we're gonna do marketing. We're a marketing company. Now we're transitioning to tech uh, and I guess you'd say yeah, tech and data and things like that. Whatever you want to encompass that in. And that's the fun part of being a startup. I'll add this in. It's like you kind of get to paint a picture that changes like every day. It's like
Yeah.
making a puzzle and you like looking at this like if you like if you've done a puzzle before, you're looking at the final picture, but the final picture kind of changes every day and you get to you're the one that gets to change it, right? Like um if I wake up tomorrow and I'm like, we really need to work with um South African food creators, people that do South African food reviews. Like we can do that. And that can be our entire company, right? If we want to
Yeah.
make that entire company, cool. It's a fun process. And I think to iterate constantly is another important thing. Like constantly revisiting your company structure, constantly revisiting your company vision, very important to do. Especially if you're a startup in a fast moving industry, things can change by the week. Um, like in entertainment, things change by the week. I mean, some things don't stay the same. Like I said, agents and managers have been around forever. That's about the
Yeah.
only thing that doesn't change. like like who they are changes. Like maybe they like go around, but like the actual structure doesn't really change. But like you think about 10 years ago, no one heard of TikTok. Hardly
No.
anyone was on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, and now those are entire multi-billion-dollar spaces
Yes.
where a lot of people create wealth. And we're talking about 10 years. You talk about 5 years. TikTok was barely coming out. No one took it seriously. Um, and now you look at even 1 year, that all might go away.
Yeah.
like
Could be
like it might
regulated
go,
out. We don't
yeah, it
know.
might get regulated out, right? So it's like you want to revisit and constantly iterate because that's a whole thing. So
So I like that. I like that constant creativity. I do want to capture what you said because I think that vision of sort of empowering or giving the opportunity for more creators to create is a cool vision that your people can get behind. That's a
well
bigger
I
vision.
think yeah that's kind of what we want everyone to get behind because everyone wants like from a like if we stay as a marketing service company, like every marketing service company has some like we want to be bigger than that, and that's kind of the purpose to accelerate forward because we want other marketing companies to be able to use our technology. It's free,
Yeah,
right? We want it to accelerate their business, and if we can build it around that, uh, then that's obviously our goal. So yeah.
that's amazing. So one more, maybe one or two more questions, Max. Tell me about your people. So you had to hire some people. You have some people working for you. How'd you build your structure and how you decide who you're going to hire? And how's that going?
Well, uh, when you're starting out without so I mentioned this before, we're bootstrap company, so there's never been a dollar of investor money in the company, which
Beautiful.
as I mentioned before, at the beginning, I was like, you need to have cash flow every single month. Nowadays, because we're doing other things, we're developing actual product, we're developing, we are cash flowing every month, but now it's not like the number one priority. Right now, we can go a month and say, okay, we broke even or whatever, and next month we're going to go even crazier. But you're starting out, it can be difficult. Like, how do you hire someone great without any money in the bank?
Yes.
um, and my answer to that is don't hire unless you absolutely need to. And that comes from experience because at a certain point we were scaling up very quickly. There was a lot of money in the creator space because a lot of companies wanted to move money to social media. So we had
Yeah.
so much money moving in. And I was like, oh my God, in order to handle all of this, we just need to hire whoever wants a job, boom. Like, you have one, right? And that was tempting to do because I felt like hiring, like having good numbers from a like, oh, we hire so many people. I was very proud of that. I was like, we provide this, like, we're providing jobs to people. I was very proud of
Sure.
that.
Sure.
And I thought that was a metric of success personally. I said, okay, if I can hire, we had 30 people working for us, either part time or full time last year, right? And I was very proud of that. But what happens when your initial, like, we had an industry change because people start talking about banning TikTok, and your main revenue source is TikTok. So what
Mm.
happens then? So
Mm.
we have to go back and we have to look at our company vision. We have to look at our actual surveys. We have to go back and redefine this entire structure, which we've been doing over the past year. Which from a hiring perspective, I found that maybe we should be slower to hire,
Mm.
because that means if we were slower to hire to begin with, perhaps we would have had some better feedback where we didn't have, and I think that's uh, didn't have the issues that we did. And I think that's important to note. Like now, we're being very slow to hire.
Mm.
Um, we're adding responsibilities and shifting around with current employees more. Um, where to look is important. I like LinkedIn. Obviously, like if you find a great, if you get lucky with a great employee, they're gonna know other people that are great, just
Yep.
typically. So, I think that's what the referral basis will become really powerful.
Yeah.
But I think finding people that are really passionate about whatever it is you're doing, because obviously if you're passionate about it, you can't be the only one that's passionate about it in the world. Rarely that's the case, right? There's got to be something you can inspire people with, to come in and care about it from a visionary and mission standpoint, even if the money's not great. And ideally, you pay your people great. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
saying, but sometimes it's not able. Sometimes it's not possible. If the company's not making money, it's not possible. And so, um, that's kind of where I would say my perspective on hiring is, and my perspective currently is like hire slow and only hire if you need to. Um, but that might change, I think, if we have another like expansion market happen. I don't know, but ideally, you want to hire slow and hire great people and hire great talent.
Better to wait and make sure you got the right talent. 100%. I've always been a big talent focused person, run a lot of massive teams in my life. And boy, I'll take one good person over two or maybe even three marginal people every time. They'll get the work
Yeah.
done, be done better, and they require almost no management. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Ideally, someone without oversight, without the need for oversight is really important.
yeah, super. Okay, last question. Culture Club. You got the band from a long time ago. You have
Oh,
Culture Club. Talk to me about that.
I think there's a lot of power and familiarity.
Yes.
So many people, like even like 3 years ago when we first started, like so many people, oh, I think I've heard of your agency before. I think I've heard of your company before. Culture Club, that sounds so familiar. I'm like, yeah, been around. And most people, Gen Z or millennial, don't know the band,
Yeah.
don't know Karma Chameleon. They don't know these songs, right? Like, but people have heard it, and I'm a big fan of alliteration,
Yeah.
and um, and it kind of like I wanted to do something to do with culture, like we are
Yes.
part of culture, right? And I wanted it to be something that invited people, right? Well, club, it's inviting to people.
Yes.
So that was something. I toyed around with a couple names like creative culture, creative club. Um, there are other names that were in the drawing board, but that one kind of stuck, like,
Yeah.
kind of, and I stuck with it once we started this. And I think I call it the familiarity complex. It's a human thing, psychological thing. Like, if I say something that sounds familiar to you, you're automatically going to like it more.
Yes.
Um, Especially if you positively associate with the other thing. Now, if it's a negative association, then probably not. But like with the '80s band, like, it's not controversial at all. Like, people are gonna be like, "Oh, I've heard of that, so I like it." Yeah,
It's good. I like the name a lot, and that's why advertising works, right?
yeah,
Familiarity.
yeah.
You can if you can gain some of that. But hey, Alex, I thoroughly enjoyed it. You have a lot of wisdom for somebody that has been in business. Let's just call it 3 years. You clearly got
I gotta
game.
make another month. It's another 30 days, man. You gotta. I don't want to jinx it.
I think you're probably gonna. I think you can probably squeak it over the finish line without too much problem. So, I just wish you the best. I thoroughly enjoyed our time. Thank you so much for your wisdom and taking the time. And
Of
cheers
course.
to the future. Keep doing great
Thank you.
things.
Thank you, Warren.